Have you ever felt like a place didn't care that you were there? Not in a malicious sense, not because it's hostile, but because you were simply too small to be registered. Maybe you're just casually scrolling and you come across something like this. Maybe you're like me, go looking for it and find this. Something about the way we perceive the world is very different depending on the scale we can act on. As such, living things are built for their world at a scale that they can act on. But what about when they aren't? What about when a place has structure and a purpose, but none of it is sized for you? This video is about one such place. But while it's fictional and a story about this megastructure with cyborgs that spend their entire existence trying to hunt the few remaining humans left, I can't help but feel like it's the perfect testing ground for a hypothesis. You see, Blom is a story about this, an ever-expanding megastructure built entirely by rogue machines designed for no one. And you, stepping into the shoes of Killy, see the world through his eyes, which makes you feel fragile. But this place is based on a very real class of environments, many of which I'm sure you've seen before, some of which we've created for ourselves. So what would a place like this do to you? And more importantly, should it scare us? Traditionally, big things have been built as a display of power, often as a demonstration of the heights reached by a specific civilization. As such, towering monuments can be found all across history, all across the modern world, and even in fiction. But there's something about this that people miss. These monuments are meant for people. The pyramids are enormous, but you can enter them. The Colosseum symbolized Rome's empire, but it was built to be filled with people. And even the Death Star is literally a spaceship. So these places make you feel small, but they still acknowledge that you're there. And by doing so, at least in theory, are supposed to make you feel seen. Blonde does no such thing. The setting is largely empty. The paths are covered with dimly lit emergency lamps, still blinking long after the world has ended. Everything is bland, generally a hallway or a staircase. And the city, which is what this megastructure is called, feels endless. But the best example of this indifference is Killy, who's moving, constantly, searching non-stop for this thing called the net terminal gene, the thing that's supposed to restore control over the rogue machines to humanity. But as he does, there are very few other people, he doesn't know where to look, and the city keeps expanding. In the scale of our world, a goal like this would be perfectly reasonable. In fact, there's literally a dude who has walked across the entire Americas. And that's because at the most basic level, your brain is designed to do 4 things. Take in information, act, notice what changed, and then adjust. This feedback loop is a big reason why nervous systems evolved to begin with. But there's something I left out. It only works if the environment gives you feedback. And not only feedback, but feedback at the right scale. In Blom, Killy walks and walks, he looks and looks, but the city is so large that it doesn't feel like he's making any meaningful progress. It makes it feel like the world doesn't need you, like it can't change because of you. And that, at least to me, is about as anti-human as an environment can feel. There isn't a lot we know about the city. Most of the information is hinted at. But what we do know is that the city likely originated as a solution to overpopulation, built by robotic entities called builders who were used to expand the city. Over time, these builders lost control and eventually reached the moon, which they then used for materials and integrated into the city. But if we look here, the true demonstration of the city's scale, at least I think, is this. The city kind of looks like a Dyson sphere, with a diameter of roughly 1.6 billion kilometers. As such, you'd expect no life to exist at all. But that isn't the case. Across the city, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of tribes and settlements, all splintered into millions of little pockets. And what's more is that they're very diverse. Some are cyborgs, silicon lifeforms that are an entirely new species. Others are technomads who follow the same strategy as traditional ones, but in search of safety instead of food. Then there are the laborers, a city of people who are giants, something like 3 or 4 times the size of the average human. All of these groups have developed very different strategies to counter the same problem, the mismatch between the city's scale and the scale at which the human brain can operate at. In doing so, they not only exist in very different ways, but have very different ways of interacting with each other as well. And this isn't unique. The city is extreme and fictional, but that level of scale isn't. If we were to zoom down from the way you see the world, say roughly 1,000 times, we'd enter the microscopic world of bacteria. and calling these things small is an understatement. They're so tiny that they literally blur the line between physics and chemistry. Here, bacteria kind of float, using chemical gradients to navigate towards things they want and away from things that are dangerous. And I mean, just think about how that would feel for a second. You're so small that the only way to perceive your surroundings is a violent, chaotic storm of molecules that slam into you all the time from all directions. Pretty crazy. But despite that, the point is, even at this level, there's feedback. Bacteria move and it produces consequences. They can sense things and change their direction. The feedback works because the environmental signals are actually useful. As such, they act like prerequisites for different strategies to evolve. This is a Myocosanthes, and it acts like a predator, hunting in packs like a group of wolves by using a coordinated ripple-like wave to disarm their prey. This is a Bacillus subtilis, and they create structured communities, binding together in ways that either trap things they want or exclude competitors. So even at this scale, where the simplest organism can spend its entire life on a single droplet of water, completely unaware or, more importantly, unable to experience how big the world actually is, incredibly diverse strategies can evolve. Strategies that are pretty similar to animals living at a completely different scale of existence, I might add. But obviously, that's not exactly what being in the world of Blom would be like. Bacteria have senses and movement that all fit into the scale at which they live at. So what about an example that doesn't? If you scroll down on shorts long enough, eventually you might come across something like this. Point of view shots of people driving towards mountains. What I love about them is the sheer scale at which the mountain range rips into the sky. A perfect demonstration of a place so large, it doesn't feel like your actions can influence it in any way. But that isn't exactly true, is it? If you were to scale, say, Mount Everest, the most dominant towering thing on Earth, to reach the summit you'd have to walk about 8,848 meters, a journey that would take roughly 75 days. It would be difficult, very difficult, but obviously possible. Many people have done it before. So despite this thing being so massive, hours if not days of grueling effort would barely translate into any noticeable change, progress is still possible. We can take in information, act, notice what changed, and then adjust. The feedback loop would just be strained. This is what I think, perhaps, the upper limit of our ability to interpret scale is, evidenced by the fact that psychosis isn't exactly uncommon in these climbers. But Mount Everest isn't the biggest thing we've traveled through. Space, and I'm just talking about the observable universe here, is estimated to have a diameter of roughly 93 billion light years, and if not, is probably infinite. However, despite this place being this vast and this imperceptible, we can still move through it. So maybe it's the lens we're using that's wrong. Despite Mount Everest and space varying widely in size, they do have one thing in common. We can use reference frames to navigate them. On Mount Everest, this is accomplished through landmarks. In space, it's outsourced to technology. So it seems like no matter what the environment is, as long as reference frames exist, the scale doesn't matter. But in Blom, the city has reference frames, doesn't it? I mean, there are paths, there are staircases, and there are landmarks Killy can use to navigate. So why in this setting would things be any different? Well, I can tell you, but I think it would be better if I show you. This is a whiteout, and in my opinion, it's one of the most terrifying things you can encounter. The perfect storm of a uniform reflective environment with a wind strong enough to cover everything. And honestly, the written records of the first encounters by explorers don't even do it justice. They describe it as suffocating, invisible, appalling, and above all, dangerous. Which I mean, yeah, it's freezing, which can end you. It's hard to breathe, which can end you. It's easy to get lost in, which can end you. And it isn't uncommon for them to last for days, which can end you. But what's horrific and what makes whiteouts uniquely disturbing is the psychological toll. Even experts, people that have trained their whole lives to overcome these events, describe it as the most mentally taxing thing they've ever done, with reports describing the feeling it creates like a featureless haze, or like you're floating, or like you've lost your sense of motion and can't tell if you're moving. Here is a photo of a whiteout from the perspective of a pilot. And as you can see, it looks like this area right here is where the horizon is supposed to be. Except, it's not. That's a false horizon. The real one is here, and looks almost indistinguishable from the fake one. The point is, in a whiteout, everything you rely on to interpret the world, the reference frames, lose so much contrast that they all blend into one. And Blom feels kinda similar. It's a place taken to a logical extreme. As such, almost everyone who reads it tends to focus on that extreme. But I'm not sure if that alone is what makes this place feel so disorientating. After all, we've long been fascinated by things that challenge our scale. As such, maybe we should look past it as a measurement and instead try to analyze it as a relationship to which we are tethered to. In general, that would be the connection between what we do and how the world responds. For example, how things get closer as you move. But if the world were like Blom, the distance between that connection would be so steep, no amount of effort would translate into a response. In other words, it would be lonely. Very similar to what I imagine walking through a whiteout for days would feel like. And if the purpose of large monuments has always been to inspire acknowledgement, to make you feel like you belong to something larger, then maybe being seen is the environment responding to you, which is why I think it's kind of poetic that Killy keeps walking. Despite the city expanding and it not responding to him at all, he keeps going, ensuring that even if it doesn't respond to him now, eventually it will. But hey, what do I know? Thanks for watching.